So, welcome to our first ever episode of the Motherhood Clinic. So, the idea is that we want to have a range of different mothers and clinicians where we have real conversations about the postnatal journey. So, kind of pregnancy, during and after.
Yeah,
Um, and it was great that we had a conversation about your journey. And to set the scene, let's talk about why we're here together,
yeah,
our journey. So, we met almost over 10 years ago,
Mm.
working with Samsung,
yeah.
um, pre-kids, working long hours in consulting. Then we both went on to do other jobs and then started our own respective businesses. You're a year in, I'm 7 months in.
Yeah.
And along the way, had two kids. And now we're here.
Now we're here, exactly.
So maybe that would be a good way to start is I'm excited to have this conversation. We spoke yesterday about some really interesting topics, which will hopefully resonate with most other mothers,
Mm.
but it's obviously very unique because no one's had your particular journey. And reflecting on your own journey that you've had into motherhood, maybe let's start there and talk about what that was like and we can take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
So, I got pregnant just before the pandemic, and I was quite young. I was 27, which by London standard is, definitely on the earlier side of that. So that brought a kind of joyful, like unknown. I hadn't really seen many people, like close friends, become parents, and so it all felt quite, I guess, new and exciting and probably quite naive.
Mm,
Because during that pregnancy, I was very sick. So I had hyperemesis, gravidarum, and spent quite a lot of time in and out of hospital, which during the pandemic, was a bit spicy at times.
mm,
And then at a time when restrictions had lifted a little bit, so I was allowed a bubble,
yeah.
spent quite a lot of time with my parents who lived, they live about 20 minutes away. And so it was definitely, I think for a lot of people, quite an isolating time to have a baby. I actually really quite enjoyed elements of there being zero expectation of
Mm,
me. And so I felt like I got a lot of time. If I wanted to be in my pajamas all day, I could.
nice.
Equally, I did a lot of walking. So I used to walk to and from my mum and dad's, and I would go out every single day with him. Kind of subsequently, it was just much more kind of chaotic. But I do
Okay,
think that kind of slowness during that time I found quite, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
good.
Mm.
You talk about expectations, which is a really big topic. Um, in lots of different dimensions. And there's your expectation of pregnancy
Mm.
before, during, and after, and the whole influence of what you see on social media and the expectation of other people, yourself. Talk to me about what were your expectations, particularly for the first, because there's so many unknowns, and for a lot of new mothers, that weight of what they put on themselves from what they see from other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a real shock, um, a real shock to the system having a baby that just slept like a normal baby. But I think my expectation going in, I had no idea that I'd need to wake up in the nighttime to feed him.
Okay.
Like that I honestly, yeah, that came as a complete surprise, which sounds utterly ridiculous,
Mm.
but for whatever reason, I hadn't really logged that as something that I
Okay.
was going to be doing.
Yeah.
Because I spent so much time during the pregnancy just basically trying to like, get through the pregnancy, have the birth, and
Yeah.
then what came after that, I kind of figured that I'd just pick it up.
Okay.
And I think that was definitely a theme. Like my husband did a lot of reading around, the first year of the baby's life and what to do when the baby came. And so I think he had more of a sort of appreciation for what newborn routines or like how a newborn would be, and then how kind of as they got older, how that
Mm.
would change. Whereas I really didn't. I looked at social media and I followed accounts that I thought might be useful around kind of baby sleep and baby feeding and midwives.
Mm.
Um, which I think is a bit of a double-edged sword if I'm kind of really honest, in terms of the times that I would find myself turning to that advice would
Yeah.
normally be when I was incredibly sleep deprived and just
Right.
like, what is going to fix this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. Really very clueless. And I think really hadn't thought much about how we would approach it together,
Okay.
which definitely came over time. But I suppose because I was very lucky in that breastfeeding came very quickly, and I didn't have any kind of issues there. So I was breastfeeding him, and we didn't do bottles for the first 6 weeks until it was suggested that we would introduce them.
Great.
And then when we tried to introduce them, he wouldn't take a bottle. So I was doing the feeding kind of solely.
Mm-hmm.
I think I hadn't changed nappies in the night, but I think with our second, we were much clearer about who did what and kind of where our
Okay.
responsibilities were.
Yeah.
Whereas with our first, it was all a bit unclear. So we would both wake up, be like, who's going to change him? What does he need? There's a lot of discussion around, what we should be doing. And neither of us had a clue. We did figure it out.
Yeah.
But it's like, what do you think? What do you think? Oh, I don't know. Like, it's just
Yeah,
you need a nappy change. And then you'd cycle through all the options and still be crying. And you're like,
Yeah.
who knows?
Of course.
And so, yeah, I think those elements of parenting were definitely not what I expected. I kind of thought that if I fed him, changed his nappy, burped him, rocked him, he'd
Yeah.
just go back to sleep
Uh-huh.
because that's what, if you look at,
That's what they're meant to do.
that's what they're meant to do. And that was not the case. And obviously hindsight's a wonderful thing, but he's very, very cuddly and very affectionate. He needs a lot of love. And I think
Mm.
that was the same as a baby. He just needed a lot of cuddles. And I was kind of looking, being like, well, surely he should just fall asleep. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, he just wanted a cuddle, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, like I said, we learn as we went, but it was definitely, for someone that's used to being very in control,
Yeah.
that I found pretty hard.
Okay. Got it. You mentioned a condition that you had as well, and it would be useful to dig a little, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Look at the main pain points that you weren't expecting and how you navigated through that. Because when we talk to other mothers about their experience, obviously everyone's birth is going to can be so different.
Yeah.
There are certain things that are similar.
Yeah.
Like figuring things out with your
Yeah.
husband or your partner, how everyone will have to go through that journey.
Yeah.
But there'll be such a wide range of physical and mental challenges that you have no idea. Like, again, the idea of a birth plan where you have, I'd love this and then you realize on the day, shit goes out the window.
Yeah.
And you just have to deal with whatever you're confronted with. And there are some things you can't prepare for.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it would be interesting to explore some of those. Again, I know it can be quite raw, but some of those pain points or the things those challenges that you had to navigate the first time round.
I think looking at the hyperemesis kind of specifically.
And what is that? Sorry.
It was an extreme form of pregnancy sickness. So I was sick every day for 9 months. I don't think there was a single day that I wasn't sick.
Every day?
Every day. And I took medication. So had 3 different types of medication, but I only took them at the point when I was hospitalized because I was so afraid of taking medicine. Well, not so afraid. Basically, I didn't realize that I had it because at the start, you can't really tell the difference between having morning sickness, poorly named morning sickness, and HG. So, the kind of context of this was that I was living with my mum and dad because we were in the process of moving house. And my mum sort of like, based on her own experience of having 4 kids, like, this is morning sickness, it will pass, you'll be fine. And the problem was that I actually just got worse and worse and worse. And I didn't know if it was just me being unable to handle it. And I didn't know that it was a medical thing.
Hmm.
I think, alongside the physical side of that, there was a mental side of that where I just felt like I was really weak, and like everyone else manages to do this, and yet
Hmm.
why am I finding this so hard?
Yeah.
But so what I did was I turned to women who I knew had seen lots of pregnant women. So
Hmm.
um, my PT, who's a friend as well, I spoke to her about it. I spoke to, you know, like friends of mine who are doctors and consultants.
Hmm.
I went to my GP and then quickly realized that actually I was pretty poorly. And then I ended up in A&E because I just couldn't, like I was starting to sort of see double because I couldn't drink water without being sick. And then was in hospital on like medical drips as well as fluids to rehydrate me.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess I didn't know that that could happen.
Yes.
Because the the stereotypical portrayal is very much kind of, you're sick a couple of times
Hmm.
and then it gets better and then you're glowing with a baby bump kind of halfway up a step ladder.
Yeah.
And that was very much not, not my reality. I lost like 20% of my body weight within, I think, 10 weeks because I couldn't eat and I couldn't drink.
Okay.
And that's when, yeah, that's probably when it was absolutely at its peak. And then it kind of settled down a bit with the medication. But yes, being sick once a day was absolutely nothing compared to that like
Wow.
period at the beginning.
And so, if you were to give any advice about who helped you with that diagnosis, or how would you advise someone else navigate? Because you're saying you don't know what normal is,
Mm,
and you assume that this is okay. So I don't know how
yeah.
long you waited, or to what severity class. So how would you advise someone to navigate that? And what were the markers for you saying this has to be seen now? Because that is so that is so unique to every individual. Some people have a very high threshold for these things.
Mm,
Some people have a low threshold. People telling them, "Oh, don't worry, it's just morning
yeah.
sickness." So how do you navigate that more effectively if you've never known what this is?
It's really hard. I don't know. I don't know, honestly, because
Okay.
it's very dependent on who you speak to.
Okay.
It's dependent on, if you know someone that has had something like that or another form of, sickness in pregnancy, then you have an awareness of what those symptoms might be.
Hmm.
But I guess the time when I went into hospital for the first time was just because physically I was in such a bad way that my husband was like, this is not okay.
Okay.
Um, and he has quite a high threshold for that kind of intervention. Like he's very eh, like he's not the sort of man that would take me to hospital without a good reason.
Okay. Right.
Like his bar for himself is very high, and I think his bar for me is pretty high too.
Okay.
Um, I think the the challenge is that you are so vulnerable. I felt so vulnerable that the last thing that I wanted to do was be in hospital by myself because it was COVID without Adam.
Mm.
Where was I going with it? Like my ability to advocate for myself was pretty low because
Yeah.
I was in such a bad way. And then when someone says like, "Oh, like, have you tried some ginger?"
Mm.
It's quite. I think it's quite hard actually in those situations to be like, "No, there is a real problem." And luckily, when I did go to hospital, I was taken very seriously because it was so severe. But I
Yeah.
think there were times in the lead up to that where if it had been kind of taken more seriously,
Yeah.
then it probably wouldn't have got there because they
Yeah.
could have medicated earlier. I think
Mm.
that's the other thing about pregnancy is that a lot of these things aren't tested on pregnant women because nobody wants to test medicine on pregnant
Interesting.
women.
Okay.
And so, basically you're told like, these are the risks of this medicine, and you have to weigh up whether the risks of this medicine outweigh the risks of your sickness.
Yeah.
And I think, again, as a early pregnant woman, you're kind of being presented with a choice with like your comfort now
Hmm.
versus your unborn baby's
Health.
health.
Yes.
And that's where the kind of sacrificing of the mother kind of for me began.
Yeah.
And so I tried so hard in my head to
Mm.
be like, I will be fine. This is fine. I don't want that. And ultimately I ended up not having a choice, but kind of because HG is for me got progressively worse. So
Yeah.
it like ramped up to the
Yeah.
point where I was then extremely unwell.
Yeah.
And in that ramp up, if I could go back, I would just start taking that medicine. But I think
Mm.
there's a kind of the psychology of choosing yourself ahead of your unborn baby is pretty tricky.
Yeah. It's really interesting when you talk about that's where that compromise begins. And you're absolutely right. When you say it feels like a toss up between your health versus the baby's future health.
Yeah.
It was the first time I think you mentioned it when we spoke a month ago, when you said, I wanted to I wish I learned how to advocate for myself, learning how to do that and having the vocabulary or the language or the understanding of what you're
Mm.
going through. Because you talked about you didn't even know how to even describe what it was you were going through. What enabled you to be a better advocate for yourself? And how can other people uh, learn that or do a better job of that or realize what it means to advocate for themselves?
In a kind of medical context,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of the specifics of definitely where I felt like I've had to kind of work harder at it. But I think there's like a being able to describe and not play down. So I think previously I would go, to the doctor and be like, oh, this is happening, but it's fine.
Mm.
And because I have endometriosis, which was diagnosed, it took, I don't know, like it was diagnosed when I was 23 and I think I'd had it from about 17.
Hmm.
Um, when I would go to the doctor or the hospital or the consultant or whoever,
Yeah.
um, it's like these things are happening, but don't worry. Like there's this self correcting or like reducing of the
Self-deprecating.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, like playing down the reality of what it was, which meant that you're not really giving the doctor the ability to understand how much it is impacting you. And I think
Mm.
kind of getting that diagnosis and understanding what was happening in my body made me reflect on how I'd been describing it,
Yeah.
and it, removing any kind of, or trying to remove any feelings of embarrassment or
Hmm.
like that I shouldn't be in these clinics because my symptoms weren't bad enough.
Mm.
Um, and particularly when it's something that takes a while for people to recognize or diagnose, there is this voice. I found this voice, which is like, are you making this up? Like, is this real? It's like, well, yeah, of course, like, yes, it's real, but it's just being able to, talk about what's happening in your body clearly without self-modifying.
Hmm.
And I think that, has stood me in better stead postpartum. I've had to learn to do that quite a lot.
Okay.
And also, you know, doctors and consultants are human beings, and the NHS is very, very stretched. And so there are points where I've been told something that perhaps is a bit dismissive or,
Yep.
actually doesn't factor in the complexity of the female body.
Mm.
Um, and I have had to be like, well, no, get a second opinion, or, whatever it is, like really not kind of shy away from something just because I feel slightly uncomfortable.
Yep.
And I think that that's been important and that's been a learning. And I think honestly, it was on reflection of that first pregnancy where, I think I learned the importance of advocating for myself, because I don't think I really did in the beginning of the hyperemesis. I think it was only when it just got to such an extreme point that it couldn't be ignored that, things started changing. And I think if I'd been able to articulate it better, I wonder whether perhaps it wouldn't have got so bad. But you never know.
Never know.
You never know.
We attended this health tech conference a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about the role of AI and technology. And we touched upon this briefly, which is a lot of people worry about technology depersonalizing care and taking stuff away from doctors. But actually, there was a really valid point where we assume that we would prefer to speak to a person about certain problems.
Yeah.
But actually, there'll be stuff that I've told ChatGPT that I've never told anybody, or you might have uploaded your test results to ChatGPT, because what it enables you to do is to onboard into that conversation that you have no idea how to broach with a human. Just the playback can give you a few more structured thoughts to then begin a conversation, which I think is hugely valuable. It allows you to get whatever's up here that you're too embarrassed to tell anybody in the first place, and it's just a means to get you to a point where you can have a conversation.
I agree. I also think it gives you sometimes, well, I certainly found that I didn't necessarily understand what my test results actually meant. So I had a lot of tests, and again, like, things would come back high, low, whatever. And actually sometimes that's a big problem, and sometimes it's not really that big a problem. And so being able to upload kind of, it's got a lot of my personal data, but lots of information, and to have a, bot basically search for other people or like instances where they might have had similar results to you, and how that might present and what might have helped. I think that's also quite an interesting angle, particularly with female medicine, if only there was more data, but hopefully that will get better and better, right? But I think there's almost like something quite cathartic about being told that this isn't abnormal. And that, there are certain things that you might be able to ask your specialist, or things to explore with them, not to use it as like a diagnostic tool, but just to inform yourself about what these things could mean. And then it makes you better able to talk about what they mean for you.
I agree. The experience of motherhood is such a singular and often isolating experience. And it's that contradiction, all the shame, embarrassment, guilt, inability to talk to other people is because you go through that alone. And how do you bridge that when actually there's comfort in knowing that other people like me or other people unlike me are going through this same thing? And I guess that's the value of the internet or other people to connect you with that. You talked about, finding your tribe or curating your support network. Either you have those going into motherhood, or you don't, and you discover new tribes, etc. What was that journey like for you? What were those things that helped to really bring that isolating experience into interview?
I think, again, it's like it was all quite, I think, tempered by COVID. So where you would normally have lots of baby massage and sensory and all of those groups, that was just kind of much reduced, essentially. But I guess there's a few things that I did quite consciously, and a few things that I think retrospectively, I built over time. But I joined an antenatal group, and met kind of local mums in the area. And, I've made some really like lovely friends from that. That was also a process of, kind of figuring out myself, because you arrive in this antenatal group, which was all on Zoom, as, a pregnant woman. And then what you have in common, you know, by very nature of being antenatal group is the fact that you're having a baby, and you may or may not actually have that much in common. And
Yeah.
so I think there were elements of that that I actually found quite challenging,
Okay.
because I would compare myself, to women who had had these really lovely pregnancies and felt very
Mm.
bonded with their babies. And, the moment that they gave birth kind of felt this overwhelming love. And I was very much like, I hadn't really bonded during my pregnancy because my pregnancy had been just absolutely awful,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
Um, and then when Seb was born, he was like a very kind of, it was very, very lucky, like very healthy, like huge baby, just like couldn't really have asked for more considering
Mm.
how unwell I'd been, but I felt quite disconnected from him, and I felt like he was being given all of this attention, he was thriving, and I
Mm.
was like this shell of a
Yeah.
human being. I'm like, what about me? And there's quite a lot of shame in that, because again,
Yes.
I'd watch, people talk about their, these babies and how lovely it is, and it was lovely, and I did feel like it was lovely, but I was also
Yes.
a bit like, what on earth is this? Like,
Yeah. What about me?
what have I done? And there were moments that it's like, why won't you stop crying? Like, this is awful.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes those groups can be like really positive, but also there is this element of comparison between people who have very, very different lives to you,
Yes. Yes.
and different support networks. And,
Yeah.
you know, so that was definitely, yeah, I'd say that there were pros and cons to that. But actually, one of the places that I really did meet some like lovely, just very supportive women was through Ladies Who Crunch, which is a network focused on kind of holistic
Mm.
health and strength. And Nancy, who runs it, organised walks. So it's like people bring their buggies, their dogs, and it was
Lovely.
part of what she did, I think, particularly during those like COVID years,
Yeah.
that brought together women who had similar values by virtue of wanting to do strength training for themselves as
Mm.
opposed to like losing weight. Um, and again, the narrative around like getting your body back after your baby, I found pretty toxic.
Mm.
But also the kind of mummy wine culture wasn't really something like I was not in the right headspace for a glass of wine at all. And
Mm.
so that wasn't really something that I wanted to do either. But this was just very like, it was fun. And
Yeah.
it was, I think I probably felt like I had a lot more in common with some of
Great.
those women. And that was really, it was really important. I'm not sure that um, I ever probably expressed that at the time, but that really gave me like quite a lot of strength, I think.
Great.
And then over time, like now, through the childminder that we use, I really feel like I found my community, and through the
Yes.
school network, and like that for me is like more, I feel more at home in
Good.
those support things. But yeah, there's a bit of actively seeking it out, and there's a bit of sometimes you actually just have to wait. I know that sounds
Mm.
um like very kind of difficult and annoying, but you figure it out, and you figure out
Yes.
people that you like get on with, that you enjoy spending time with, that perhaps make you feel good about
Mm.
yourself as a parent, rather than feeling like you're not like living up to
Yeah.
kind of maybe your own expectations of what that might look like. I
Yeah.
think that's partly time, and that's partly just figuring out who your people are.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of points you raised there that I think resonate not just in motherhood, but in life in general,
Mm.
where there's where you think you should be
Yeah,
and there's where you actually want to be.
yeah,
Right. So you talk about the antenatal classes and there's a certain face that you present to the world about how things are. So seeing Instagram pictures and then having a great time versus inside you're dying.
yeah.
But then the second point was this journey of discovery
Mm.
and identity change,
Yeah.
right? Where you're trying on different identities
Mm.
and maybe it's this group and maybe it's that group, or maybe it's this way that I present myself. And you're lucky if you find it in the first go, but very unlikely.
Yeah.
But you have to try on these different experiences just to see how you feel.
Yeah.
And you're going from Charlotte, young, free, single, outwardly going lady, to shit, what the hell's happened to me?
Yeah.
This is not what I thought this would be.
Yeah.
And then, oh, I don't like this one. And then we talked a bit about this notion of what identity change and transition and discovery to this notion of rebuilding yourself as opposed to getting back to what you once were.
Yeah.
Which is what I understand, which is, I think there is that notion, yes, I want to get back to what I remember because that's my only reference point.
Yeah.
So this unknown of what Charlotte is in the future after post-baby is a bit scary, unknown. But this notion of rebuilding yourself was a really good point. I think there's a lot to that. I know that applies, I don't think just in motherhood, but in any transition, whether it's career, whether otherwise, whether it's, I think there's a lot there that I could personally attest to as well.
Yeah.
But I think in particular for motherhood, because there's just such a drastic change physically, mentally, all the life experiences that are happening for the very first time.
Yeah.
And you've got no idea what's happening next, right?
I've got no idea.
I
know, and especially I think, during that, I was in full-time employment before, like when I was pregnant, I had mat leave, because it was a startup, it was statutory mat pay, so it wasn't, I kind of always sort of knew that I was going to be going back a bit before a year. But I, in my head, I had this quite a long stretch of time that I wasn't going to be working for. And that I found pretty hard. Like that was the first adjustment for me, was like, I'm someone that like I love work. Like I really enjoy my job. I like spending time with people. I like thinking about interesting stuff. I like doing stuff. I like the buzz of kind of startup, consulting, whatever that was a big part of my identity, and it still is. It's just different. But I think when that, when I was on maternity leave, that felt like a bit of a loss, even though I had this brilliant, new baby and I loved it. It was such a huge shift that kind of, I had to be quite strict with myself. Like I deleted Slack from my phone because I'd find myself just on the Slack channel and I'm like, what am I doing? Like it's 3 a.m. I'm feeding. Why am I reading through these Slack messages? And so, we had to be like, right, this is what this time is for. It's for being with my baby and getting to know my baby, and I don't need that other stuff. And I would gradually start replacing it with, all of these sound quite anodyne, but I'd like go for walks, listening to podcasts about stuff that I found interesting, and I did loads of reading of, like on my phone when I was feeding or on a Kindle, whatever it was. And so I'd start to I guess spend a bit more time doing stuff that I'd really loved in those slower moments with the baby, when you are just like still, like you spend a lot of time still on the sofa in those first few months feeding. And so that was part of it. And then as your baby, and you move kind of further away from the birth, as more time elapses, you can start thinking about like, okay, I want to focus on rebuilding my pelvic floor because I know that that's taken a bit of a hit. So, Adam, why don't you take a walk at lunchtime and I will do that. And so I'd start to add into my week things that I like doing, obviously with the support of my husband. But it's that like level of intentionality. It's like, this is what really matters to me. And my time is much more limited now. And so these are things that we want to make time for. So that was quite a big part of it. And that's obviously like, communication is key, but it's both of you saying, this is what really matters to me, and this is the stuff that I'm okay not being the focus for now. And and as your baby grows up, like there's kind of the available time changes. So there was no way that I was going to be getting up in the morning to exercise because I was absolutely knackered. But it was quite a good time for Adam to exercise.
Okay.
So it kind of changed through the different phases. And I think making sure that as a team, we were very clear on what was a priority and what was going to make us feel better. We just made we made it like important.
That's
We
good.
spoke about it a lot.
That's good.
But yeah, I think I do feel like having really forced me to like get very clear on what my priorities were. Because you say no to more stuff, right? Because you're focused on bringing your baby up.
Yeah.
But you also have to work out like what matters for you. Yeah.
It's probably one of the first times that you're forced to do that. I mean, it's such a healthy exercise.
Yeah.
It's a very painful exercise.
Yeah.
And with the pace of most people's lives nowadays, people, unless they have to, they very rarely take the time to actually look at those and answer those questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
think COVID was one of those universal events where everyone was forced to confront all those things that they could conveniently not have to face.
Yeah.
So COVID was an awful time for everybody. But there was also the one thing a lot of people had, some people had, was time. And that can be a very good thing and a very bad thing.
Yeah.
Having to answer those questions of what is a priority for me?
Yeah.
Or what do I want to do in life? These are pretty big questions that you can't really answer easily. But when you are forced to, because you can't do anything else, if you do find a way to begin to explore what that is, it can be very valuable.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it reinforced, like I had an hour a week where I would do exercise with a PT, and I think I did physio first, and then I moved to doing PT, but that was like by myself, and then I would also, when he was very small and not really moving anywhere, I'd like use my laptop, put on a like yoga thing or whatever it was I wanted to do, and he would be on the mat and I would do that. And that, him seeing me exercise, I found very empowering. I found it like, it's really lovely that you get to see this and this be a positive thing.
Yeah.
And so I think it starts like reinforcing your decisions.
Nice.
Because then, now he'll be in the gym with me and he'll like sit. We've got a gym in our shed, but he'll sit on the sofa and he'll be like, "God, Mummy, you're so strong."
I love
like that is great. But
Yeah.
I think that kind of it's a conscious thing that you choose to do, and you choose to do it because it makes you happy.
Yes.
Which also makes me like a better mum. But like fundamental, like it's enough that it just makes me happy. But I guess now seeing, him seeing a healthy relationship with exercise and like cheering me on for being strong, like it feels really good.
Yes.
And so I think you get that, like, it's a different type of validation than you get from being at work and delivering good work and being appreciated. But you do start to see kind of, I guess the values that you hope that you give your kids, like actually coming out, and that, it's just all about, I think, being quite thoughtful about your choices.
Yes.
And trying to keep any guilt that's like, you're a terrible mum because you're not giving him 100% of your attention and you're, indulging yourself in a video, keeping that at bay.
Yeah. But it's a practice.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
The first time you feel a bit uncomfortable, then you get used to it. But I think where it seems you struck the right balance is that enjoyment that you get now becomes a shared enjoyment.
Yeah.
Another thing we talked about was, you found working out and exercise as something that is really great for you, makes you feel good, which makes you a better mum, that he also enjoys and he sees you feeling good about yourself.
Yeah.
Another thing we both have in common is we both like to write as well. And that's another thing which is a purely for you, but it's also a great way, again, that is quite an empowering activity
Mm.
and again, I use writing as a way to get all the fluff in my head
Yeah.
and just get it onto a page and then reconstruct that however I want it to be or into a narrative. And I loved your notion. You say you literally take control of the narrative because you write your own narrative.
Yeah.
And I think whether you do that by talking to someone else
Yeah.
and just reaffirming or just talking out all the shit that you want to get out of your head and just like pouring it out. And some more you tell someone how you feel or an image of yourself that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be an element of there'll be some people you say like, this is how it is and it's a complete mess.
Yeah.
And there'll be other times when as you start to pick yourself back up again or you get more confidence, you start to look at those same events through a different lens.
Mm.
And it's that narrative that then becomes empowering because if that's how you think about yourself, that's how you actually become.
Yeah.
And the conversation does that, but also writing does that.
Yeah.
And I know that you love to write too. So I'd love to tell me about like what that's done for you because I know you write on Substack and LinkedIn and a few places, right? So
I do, like for all my sins.
but it's great. I mean, do you find it how what's your approach to writing or what does it do for you?
I think I I did an English degree at uni, and I've always loved reading and writing, and that particularly kind of growing up was something that I spent a lot of time doing. And then, when I started working, I was working pretty hard, and kind of I spent less time, I guess, writing for pleasure, reading for pleasure, and it's something that I've come back to, partly after having kids and like wanting them to love reading.
Hmm.
I also, it reminds me that that's something that I love
Yeah.
too, and like that I should probably invest a bit more time doing that because it makes me happy.
Good.
And I think writing kind of came when I started working for myself and started my own business because I knew that I wanted to share some of my ideas and some of my perspectives as a way to, put your voice out there into the
Hmm.
world. And then, I've always sort of jotted stuff down on my phone or like written in a notebook next to my bed if I can't sleep and I just need to get something out. But it was very much limited to that. I wouldn't really go back and read it.
Yeah.
So I have lots of notes, like funny stuff that would happen at work or like, things that notice you're like, that's pretty funny. Like that would
Yeah.
make a great whatever.
Yeah.
But actually, it was after chatting to you that I thought, maybe I should write down what this journey has been like.
Hmm.
After quite I had quite a confronting appointment at the hospital, and I felt like I'm not really sure. I think I felt quite validated, but I also felt like the whole 4 years had just been a complete mess to getting to this diagnosis. And so I find that when I write something down, what starts as like, disjointed sentences and things not quite matching up and the chaos of my brain that just like tumbles out onto the page. And then you look at it and you're like, okay, this is, you know, clearly I feel pretty strongly about this, but
Mm-hmm.
actually maybe there's some hope in being able to find your way through like things that feel very chaotic or conflicting advice or whatever it is, that you then add the structure and you start to play around with the contrast between funny observations that you make in the moment and actually like some pretty heavy feelings that come through.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really helped me understand how I feel, but then articulate it in a way that doesn't feel like I'm out of control.
Good.
Because I read it back and I'm like, actually, like, I think I have made sense of this somehow on the page. And then, for me, the more I feel in control of my own life and of my own narrative and of my own choices, the more empowered I feel.
Mm.
And I think, like, particularly some of the things on Substack, how you feel about certain things can change with time or information. I think I've always had a bit of a barrier to putting something out there because it might change and it's obviously my one perspective, and there's lots of other views on it, but it's been quite fun to acknowledge the power and just like putting it up.
Yeah.
You know, just like,
Yes.
this is fine. This is what it
Yeah.
is for now, and that can change. And I may look back at this and think, what was I thinking? But doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You then write something else.
Exactly that. Exactly that.
So yeah, I think it is empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for no one else other than yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is the beauty of this thing.
I agree.
Yeah, I feel the same. This has been really helpful.
Yeah, it's been great.
This has been good. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
Well, thank you very much, Charlotte. Do you want to tell people your business and, if you want to, your Substack?
Yeah. My Substack is charlottexbrown.substack.com, I think.
Okay.
But that's the first. It's Charlotte and then an X and then Brown, which is my last name. And then my business, I run a brand strategy and marketing strategy studio as an independent consultant. So I work with startups, scale-ups on brand strategy projects, but then also do some fractional CMO work alongside.
And that's called?
It's called Lacuna.
Lacuna.
Obviously, how did I forget? Yeah, it's called Lacuna Studio.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you so much.
It's been good, man. All righty.